I'm originally from the west of Ireland, from a very small town called Ennis in County Clare, and I moved to Dublin when I was about 19 to go to drama school, and I had never seen heroin addicts before, and I moved into a part of the inner city where the rent was cheap, but it was kind of chaotic around there, and there was a lot of, especially in the north inner city, there still is a lot of heroin abuse goes on. So you see, I saw homeless heroin addicts for the first time, and I had never witnessed that before, and I began to feel, just as a witness, I began to think that there was like two time scales going on in Dublin. One was where everyone was going around their business, and the other was this almost slow motion dance that was going on around. And I'm a great diary keeper, and I began to keep just notes and notations about things that I saw heroin addicts do on the street. Like, I think I explained to you over dinner about, I saw two grown women fighting over a chalk ice, and they were both whacked out of it, and one had the chalk ice in one hand and the other had her hand over the chalk ice, and they were pulling the chalk ice one to the other, going, "It's my chalk ice, now it's my chalk ice," and the chalk ice fell off the stick onto the ground. And I thought there was something incredibly brutally funny about it. There was something incredibly sad and kind of funny about it at the same time. I watched a boy in the middle of the traffic island on O'Connell Street who had a hypodermic, the tip of a hypodermic syringe in one hand and a cigarette butt burnt down right down to the filter in the other. And he fell down in slow motion, basically just like that. But it took him, I think I timed it, it was about 3 minutes before he hit the ground, like he did. And I was in drama school studying mime at the time, and I was kind of going, Jesus, Lecoq would pay a fortune to learn how to be able to do that. And so I began to just, as an objective observer, take these notes. And then I kind of, once you open your mind to kind of looking at things, you can't stop looking at them, or you can't close your mind to it. So, to make a very long answer shorter, or actually longer, I had written a couple of plays, and the producer who produced Adam and Paul came to see one of the plays, and then he came to me afterwards and said, "Do I have any ideas for a film?" So I kind of told him that I did, even though I didn't, but I did think that the massive stories I had in my diary would make something. So I knew that it would take place from sunrise to sunrise, and I knew they were called Adam and Paul, and you'd never be able to find out which one is Adam and which one is Paul, and I knew they'd meet a baby in the middle. So that was as much as I knew, but I knew that it was going to be a meandering, you know, I knew there was going to be a lot of Laurel and Hardy in it and blah blah. So I pitched it, and they said yes, and he hooked me up with Lenny, and that's how I started working with Lenny, so I was very lucky.
So you didn't know Lenny before? Huh?
No.
And this was the first thing you'd done for screen as well?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was very lucky. I meet other screenplays and screenwriters, and I go, "Yeah, my first screenplay, you know, I wrote, got made," and they go, "Your first screenplay got made? How dare you bastard!" And so I was incredibly lucky, and it was a great adventure that we went on, you know, because it was made for a very small budget. I had no dealings with the Irish film world, so I knew nothing about it. All I knew is that I watched a lot of films and I wanted to write films, and suddenly we were making films, but we had no, you know, it wasn't like, you know, we were meeting the other filmmakers in a pub going, "So what are you working on at the moment?" "Oh, I'm working on this." It was just, we felt like we just kind of went on this mad adventure, and that came out of it, so we were very proud of it. I mean, I am incredibly proud of it, you know.
Oh, yeah. It is very good, very powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So being the actor and the writer, how did you juggle both roles?
I took the what I call the Wurzel Gummidge approach, which is I got my acting head on now and Clary, and so you compartmentalise. I mean, we spent a long time working on the script. I mean, Lenny said, and it's very true, a script doesn't get fixed on set. So we made sure that the script, you know, I have 18 drafts of the script at home. I mean, it seems to be very sparse, but we worked our way towards that, or I worked my way towards that. And then with the acting, I wasn't supposed to act in it, actually. I wrote the main, one part for Tom, who's in that with me, and then I wrote the other part for another friend of mine who pulled out for various reasons about 2 weeks beforehand, and I was the thinnest actor in Dublin at the time, and everybody else was fat. And I knew the lines, and so it was literally, I had to step in, so I'm absolutely delighted that I did, but it wasn't intentional.
Right.
I was going to be a writer and just stroke my chin like that on the sidelines, but I was delighted I did, because Tom, who sadly is no longer with us, Tom died about 2.5, 3 years ago, but he was my best friend in the whole world, and in fact, you know, ever since the very first job I got, I was his understudy in a play, and he was a very silent, quiet little fella, and I used to spend the time taking the piss out of him all the time. So I used to make him laugh, and then I wrote that part for him as a great present for him, and I thought it was a great present for him anyway. And then so what was I talking about? Was I saying something?
You were talking about juggling writing.
And so, you know, so I mean, I didn't have to. It wasn't a great bother because I think I was on set with Tom, and I was watching him performing so beautifully that he kind of upped my game. Basically, I had to keep up with him constantly. Yeah. So I didn't. It was two different journeys, and there was no real changes of script on set and everything. We used to complain about the writer. Who the fuck wrote this junk?
Now, when you were researching the characters, you said you were keeping this job, but did you go and meet any homeless people to get some of their mannerisms down and to find out what's realistic in their world? I think I set myself. I mean, I'm very much an observational writer. I'm not an intellectual writer. I don't come at something with ideas. I come with characters, and so I tried to make sure that it was as real as possible. And I wondered what it was that would make, like I was telling you at tea time as well, that like I discovered that being homeless is a very, very full-on job. The idea of where do you have a shit? Where do you eat? You know, where does your sense of dignity come from? When you're constantly being abused on the street and stuff like that, and so, but a lot of it, rather than engaging with people, and I spend a lot of time just observing. I do spend a lot of time out on the street, and like I would follow people around, and I would write down what's happening to them, or I would sit close to them. You know, a lot of the homeless guys in Dublin sit around on the boardwalk, or especially the druggie types. You know, the homeless heroin addicts and drinkers. They'd sit on the boardwalk near the river, and I'd sit very close to them, and I'd take down bits of dialogue, and I'd listen to the kinds of circular arguments that were going on, and then when the script was nearly ready, me and Lenny got involved in this group called RAID, which is Recovery Through Art, Drama and Education, and they were very much an interface organisation that allowed people who are currently using to use them, and you know, use poetry workshops and writing and telling stories to then access, you know, also the health board schemes, etc. So it was really a first step for a lot of people coming off the streets, and we went to visit them several times, and we got them to read the script to us as they played all the roles for us, and that was amazing for us, like, because, you know, they were going like, you know, that happened to us, didn't it? Gary, one Christmas we woke up and there was a dead fella alongside us, and you're going like, really? They tell you all these bad stories, but there was one particular bit. There used to be a scene at the start, it never got filmed, where these girls right at the start of the film pass them by with a shopping trolley, and in the shopping trolley is a microwave oven, and they go, "How you my pa?" and then they break their shite laughing at them, and you know, it kind of humiliates the guys really early on in the film. And so we passed that scene with the lads reading it in RAID, and then immediately one guy stops and goes, "Can I just ask, why didn't they take the microwave?" And I went, "They just didn't, you know, they didn't take it." And he went, "Okay," and we continued on with the reading, and then 10 pages went by, and he went, "Excuse me again, why, I just don't understand why they didn't take the microwave." And we went, "Look, okay, then the microwave, yeah." He stopped us a third time, "Why didn't we take the fucking microwave?" And then at the end of the film, when we got him, the last scene, we were all quite moved, you know, he's dead, and a lot of the other guys were going, "Yeah, I lost people to heroin abuse," and he piped up, "If they'd taken the microwave, none of this would have happened." And I thought it was a brilliant approach to the reading of a script, which is, if you find a hole in it and you pick it, you can solve it. It doesn't have to be made. So we had those kind of things. That some of the RAID group were in the film as maybe in extras in the background. We made a TV series after this called Prosperity, and we had some of the RAID actors played main actors in some of the storylines in that. So we had quite an engagement with them, I think. That's good, because that's a lot of what we want to do with Homeless Film Festival, is engaging homeless people in film. It's a contemporary medium for telling stories and putting a voice out there.
Yeah.
So I think that prolonged engagement's a very noble thing to do that.
Heroin abuse is very large scale. Homelessness is getting worse due to the effects of the recession and austerity that's going on. the heroin abuse is like third and fourth generation in places, and there are some, you know, there have been areas of Dublin that have been sort of out of control for a long time due to the heroin problem. And the heroin problem is, a lot of it is now centred in the centre of the city. So when you walk around, you see them, you see the boys and girls walking around pretty out of it, a lot of it, yeah. And it can be quite shocking. But I mean, there's another thing that I discovered, you know. People give out about, you know, heroin users, and they go, they're this and they're that, and, you know, having children and blah, blah, blah. And I discovered that even if you're an addict, you still love your children, you're still capable of living your life, you've got an addiction, that's all right, you know. If there was proper services there to look after people, you know, it wouldn't be the great problem that it is. So it was kind of an interesting education, the whole thing, going into figuring out the problems that these people have, you know. I always say about Adam and Paul that what led to their problems was that nobody, when they were a child, nobody picked them up and held them and said, I love you, or you're a good boy, or, you know, you're all right. There's, you know, hug you, give you a kiss. There was no parental guidance. So they were born into chaos, and so chaos became their lives, you know, I think. And it's really hard to access services for those people, I think. I don't know. I mean, obviously I'm not a professional in that area, you know, so.
No, me neither. But
that was a waffly answer, sorry.
No, it's alright. Yeah, I think raising the point of giving people access to that help, I think when you're talking about the different generations of heroin users, if they were made aware of it from an earlier age, then perhaps there's not enough awareness about the help. But even though it might be there, people aren't aware. So I think maybe one way of sort of tackling the issue would be to bring it to light. There's help out there for these people.
Yeah.
It was Lenny's first film, and your first as a screenwriter. Was it your first job in front of the camera as an actor?
Pretty much.
It doesn't look like it, like.
I had a couple of lines in another film, but I was really bad. And
you're shooting quite a lot on tough estates and central Dublin, and how long did it take to make it?
22 days, I think. 24 days maybe.
It's a short turnover.
It was very, I mean, it was...
It's a kick-bollock scramble, yeah?
It was literally kick-bollock scramble. We were flying around the place in a van and catching things where we could, or... but Lenny had a great experience. He made a lot of ads, and he had a lot of camera experience, and he made quite big scale ads. We had great professional people involved in it. James Mather, who just directed a film for Luc Besson, and he was our DP. I mean, fantastic, amazing man. We had, you know, great Dublin actors who, you know, they arrived on set and they were bang ready to go. I mean, we had no room for failure. Like if we lost a scene, or if we lost a day, we were ruined, you know. But it was a fantastic. I mean, it was the hardest month's work I've ever done. I mean, I took to my bed for about 3 weeks afterwards. I was, well, because I hadn't eaten for about a month beforehand, but trying to be skinny. But it was very hard, but very rewarding work, you know. Funny enough, trying to recreate that creative energy is very difficult now. You keep going back to it sometimes, going, well, if we did it then, why can't we do it now? But sometimes these things just happen by accident, you know, or by lucky, fantastic accident, and the energy's all there.
You need everything to come together at the right point.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't change, for instance, the order of scenes.
No.
I think there was maybe 1 or 2 scenes that were dropped from the middle, but very little. Maybe we reordered some of it, but not a lot. It had a very clear trajectory. It was from early in the day to later in the day, and each of the steps tended to get darker and darker, and it was hard to rearrange them. But we had worked the script really hard. Like I'd keep coming to Len, and he'd read it and go, look, that isn't working for me yet. I think that there's still a little glitch in there. I mean, it was a brilliant way to learn as a writer. Sometimes as a writer you can fool yourself, you can go, it's ready, but you know in the back of your mind there's something about that scene that is just giving me a pain in my arse. But I'm not willing to ask myself the question, but Lenny would always ask the question, that is giving me a pain in my arse, and you'd have to go, oh, and go back into it. So we had that solved, I think. And we'd worked out, we had worked out a list of references that we had. Like, there's a lot of references to Way Out West, the Laurel and Hardy films, even some lines from Way Out West in there.
or there's Aki Kaurismäki films are referenced a little bit throughout it, and you know, photographic references. We had it worked out. I don't think you can go in there hoping that some chaotic energy is going to pull you through it, because it's not. You know, it has to be thought through as probably more, when you have very little time, even more thoroughly, I think, you know.
And was it shot on film?
Shot in Super 16, yeah. Yeah. I sound like I know what that means. Yeah, Super 16. Yeah.
It's nice.
But there's a joke about the whole thing was, because we used to put on the credits, or we were going to put on the credits, tall Adam and Paul, Mark O'Halloran, small Adam and Paul, and Tom Murphy. So people would go, oh, I still don't know. But then we realised nobody knew who Mark O'Halloran or Tom Murphy was in the first place, so you could put it on the, because they would read the credits and go, I still don't know who the fuck is who. So I played Adam and he played Paul, but it was, I mean, there's a deliberate reason for the lack of things, because I believe that if there's a group in society and you're allowed to call them the junkies or the gypsies or the non-nationals or the Muslims or the this or the that, then you're allowed to pour a generalized hatred and disdain on them. But if you give somebody a name, you can't generalize the hate anymore. You can't generalize your feelings for them anymore. So then what we did was, you know, I gave them a name, Adam and Paul, but the audience then struggles to find a name that they want to give to them. So it was kind of, that's a very highfalutin idea, but I did think that that was kind of interesting to play with, you know, the idea of namelessness.
Yeah. Sort of touched on the lack of identity that the homeless people
Mm.
have, because when we've done the workshops through this homeless film festival, a lot of the homeless people have said that one of the most painful things is that they no longer exist and they don't really have an identity, and people just pass them by. So I think by making them that one symbiotic unit, does that.
Well, me and Tom as well, we were on the streets of Dublin, and because, you know, we had no money, you know, there was no such thing as trailers or a makeup wagon or anything like that. We used to just be sort of sitting on the side of the road whilst they were setting up a new scene with just this one small camera and a tiny crew. So people just assumed we were homeless. And I mean, you suddenly realise you get a lot of shit on the street. You get a lot of shit poured on you, and you get a lot of people being incredibly rude to you and blah blah. Maybe they've had it because they were mugged at some point, or they blame you for this or that. But it was quite incredible, and it was amazing how it chipped away at your own self-esteem. You know, you're standing there, and if you go through a month of it, and every day you're getting it, you still go home going, I wonder why I'm feeling like shit. You know, it's because you're getting that all the time. You know, and even for us it was easy. You know, we got to. It was funny. It was one thing that me and Lenny never really talked about, and Johnny, who produced it, about who would actually watch it. I've got a very large family, so I thought we'd have one full cinema screen in Galway maybe, and but we brought it out, and it had this we had no money really to promote it, but it had this word of mouth thing, and on its first week out it knocked Dodgeball, which was out at the time, from the #1 box office position in Ireland, which we thought was hilarious. This art house movie knocks Dodgeball off the radar, and it's entered a kind of, it did very well for the film that it was, like first time director, no stars in it, very much art house, you know. It just touched a nerve, and people, it got very high box office, huge. It had a huge life on DVD, it still has. I still get abused on the streets by young fellas going, I'm not wiping myself with a potato bag. And I get, so young fellas especially love it, and they still watch it. And there was a great documentary that was done in Ireland lately called Pyjama Girls. I don't know whether any of you have seen it. There's this thing in working class areas of Dublin where the women now wear their pyjamas all the time. Like they go to the shop in their pyjamas, and they've got day pyjamas and proper nighttime going to bed pyjamas, but they wear their day pyjamas out in the streets going, hey, and they did this documentary called Pyjama Girls about these two young ones who wore their pyjamas out all the time. And their last line of the documentary is, you see us two, we're like Adam and Paul. Which isn't a great thing to have in mind, but it has entered a kind of a cultural landscape in a weird kind of way. You know, it's a reference that people use occasionally. We're very proud of it, you know.
Are they the young generation, are they like, we should stay away from heroin? Is the film has this message, like, the powerful message?
Yeah, I mean, you know, weirdly enough, it wasn't
the purpose of the film to go, don't do drugs, kids, because, you know, people will do drugs anyway. And it was more a kind of to give voice to people who normally wouldn't have a voice. It's funny enough, it's not a drug movie in lots of ways. It's a movie about friendship and need and want, and why people, and where dignity lies, or where you can get dignity. I remember one young woman that I met told me that there was two street heroin addicts who were living in a tent in the courtyard of this council block of flats in Dublin, and she says ever since that movie people are very nice to them, and people brought the food and things like that, which I thought was quite sweet. You know, so I'm not sure. I don't think art can change the world, but it can make you look at it differently, maybe.
Any more questions? Oh, go on then.
What's next? What are you up to next?
Subsequent to this, we had another film that we made called Garage, which was out, and then I wrote a television series. And then I decided I'd had enough of writing, so I went back to acting. So I was in the Abbey and I was in the Gate in Dublin, and I made a film in America, acted in a film in America, and that's coming out next month. It's I play a kind of a romantic lead. It's very unlikely, and I fall in love with an 18-year-old girl, and it's a very sweet film. Beyond that, my own writing. I've written a play last year that was on in Ireland that did very well for me. I was very happy with it, and it's going to be on in Edinburgh this year. I have 2 films that are financing at the moment, but things tend to be more difficult to finance, and I kind of went off in a funny direction. I decided I didn't want to write any more Irish stuff, so I've written this a film set in Cuba, which is about Cuban transvestite prostitutes. So it's getting the budget together for that is proving a little bit difficult, but I knew it was going to be difficult, but we're getting there. You know, we hope to make it at the end of this year, start of next year. And then I have other projects going. I do a lot of script doctoring work, and writing for the theatre is one thing that I'm back doing, which I hadn't for ages, and I'm very happy.
Are you working with Lenny again?
Yeah, we're working on something. We're going to start working on something in the summertime, I think. We took a break from each other because he directed the television series I wrote, and Garage, and he directed Adam and Paul, so we decided we needed to work with other people to prove that we could, and Len's just made a film this year, which is coming out later this year, I think. So and it's very good. I've seen it. It's excellent, in fact.
Yeah, he told us about it when he did the Q&A about it.
Yeah, it's fabulous. It's a beautiful piece.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
One question. Are things in Dublin any different to how they are in the film? Or have things moved on or changed in any way? Is what we see in the film what's happening in Dublin now?
It's funny. Dublin went through this amazing transformation with the Celtic Tiger and all that, as we all heard about, and the great hubris of people buying €1,000 handbags, and there was a great belief at the time that the only people who were poor were the ignorant or the stupid or the mentally ill, basically. I mean, there was that kind of ignorance about it. In fact, the television series I wrote was called Prosperity, and it was about people on the edges of the economy as the economy was collapsing. And I think that Dublin has become a lot more civilized. I mean, there's a lot of suffering there. There's a lot of unemployment there now, but the vulgarity and the disgustingness has disappeared a lot, I think, and hopefully we'll be able to build a more democratic and more inclusive place out of the kind of detritus that's there at the moment. I mean, the whole collapse was very shocking for everybody who lived there, I think. But hopefully it'll be a better place by the end of it, when it's finished.